remind me of your, oh, here it is, Chris. Hi, Chris.
How are you?
I'm good. I just came from the pool. I went swimming. That's why my hair is all wet. I feel I
Uh,
have to explain that.
Thanks for willing to do this.
Absolutely. And thank you for being flexible with the schedule.
Yeah, no problem. So I could just jump around then with your career so far.
Yeah, ask away. And I'll do my best to answer.
I did think it was funny that when you were a preteen, you bought a bunch of like Julie Andrews memorabilia off eBay.
Oh my God, where did I say that? Wow, you really dug for that. Yes, I am still mildly obsessed with Julie Andrews, but when I was a preteen, it was deep. And I, somewhere in a box at my mom's house is still like all the newspaper and magazine clippings that I bought off eBay. I bought other people's magazine clippings off eBay, which is, I can't believe I did.
Is that also is like Julie's performances kind of what inspired you to pursue acting too?
Absolutely. Yeah. When I was about 12 or 13, I had never gotten into acting before. The only extracurriculars I'd ever done were sports because that was all anybody I knew did. And then I was watching Mary Poppins one day after school, and I was just like, this is the most majestic thing I've ever seen in my life. This is what I want to do and be. And then I told my mom, singing lessons, acting lessons, I need them, I want them. And she was so supportive and she obliged.
And so when you got to LA, were you already working at Universal when you got into voiceover or Disneyland? Hmm.
Oh, that's a great question. So the progression was I was doing musical theater home in Seattle until I graduated high school. And then the intention was to go to college at a place where I could study theater and music and prepare for my Broadway career. So I ended up at Occidental College in Los Angeles, where I was majoring in theater and music and still very focused on the theater side of things. And then when I graduated, I was already in love with my husband, and he did not want to move to New York. So I stayed in LA, and Disneyland it's a theater job, right? I mean, I was performing on stage in the Aladdin show and a couple other stage shows in the park. So that was while I was still pursuing theater in LA, but that only lasted a couple of years that I was totally focused on theater because it just doesn't pay very well. And so it was after I'd already started working at Disneyland that I discovered voiceover through a friend who directs it and realized how fun it was, that it did provide some more financial stability. And I still got to play in all the same ways that I play in the theater.
Mhm.
So that was how I started doing VO specifically.
And that was with the Winx Club.
Yes, my God, you know my career better than I do. Yeah, the Winx Club was my very, very first job.
And anime, I think it would have been Knights of Sidonia.
Yes, that was my very first anime.
You take
You're amazing me because, on IMDb, like, I think the oldest shows are not like necessarily my oldest shows, right? Like I think Saint Seiya is the oldest on IMDb,
Mhm.
but I did it way later
Right.
than it says on there.
How did you personally take to dubbing then?
Well, dubbing was how I got introduced to the working behind the microphone, period,
All right.
because Ezra Weiss is the director that was a friend of mine who sort of got me into VO in general, because he taught Tai Chi at my college, in addition to being a improviser and an audience warm-up person and just a generally good actor and a voice director. He does a lot of things, and he teaches Tai Chi. And so we became buds through that. And mostly what he directs is dubs. That's the world that he comes from and lives in. So that was my introduction is you're going to get in this room, we're going to play 3 beeps for you, and you're going to start talking. And because I'm a musician and I have a degree in music and music is part of my life, I think that really, not a prerequisite at all, but I think it really helps you adapt to dubbing, because you listen to the line and you sort of hear ba 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 of like the music of the line, even though it's in a different language that you don't understand. And that helps you be pretty accurate your first time with putting English in that place.
Mm-hmm. And were you already in SAG before that?
I think I was joining SAG around all that same time. My entry to SAG was through a sister union, because when you work at Disneyland as a stage performer, you join AGVA, which is the Variety Artists Guild. And after, I think, a year with AGVA, you're eligible to join SAG. So I probably joined SAG kind of around the same time I was getting into VO in general.
Okay. And were you a fan of anime at all? Were you like aware of it?
No, not at all. First of all, you had to work really hard to watch anime in the 90s. How old are you? Can I ask?
24.
24. Okay. So did like Netflix exist when you were a kid?
It came out when I was in 5th grade.
Fifth grade? Okay. So fairly young. Mm-hmm. And 5th grade is probably like the perfect age to start watching anime and stuff, I would think. Mm-hmm. So I think the people who were in my class who watched anime probably like either had to buy the DVDs or VHSs, which is really expensive, or just like rely on the few you could rent from the library. So it was a really small community that watched anime where I came from. And because they weren't the people I hung out with, I never got introduced to it. So I had zero experience with anime when I got into it. So I had a lot to learn about, like, the tropes of it, the style. There were all these words I had to learn, which to you and your viewers are so normal. Like, what's a isekai? What's a OVA? What's a, like, what does nani mean? So many things. But now I know them all.
Do you watch anything that you're in then?
I watched a few shows. It's a big time commitment, and I love so many TV shows that it's hard to fit it all in. I watched Gun Gale Online. I really liked watching Dorohedoro. Yeah, it all depends if I'm watching the show and I'm like, yeah, this is, I dig this.
Well, in terms of your bigger characters, who do you think you personally relate the most to then?
Oh, gosh. Hold on. Let me go close the door. My husband just started using a power tool outside. Okay. I physically relate to Len from Gun Gale Online a lot. We're a very similar size. I feel like we even kind of look the same. I mean, we have the same hairdo. So all the things about like being little and being underestimated and being feisty, I relate to. Of course, her real life alter ego is the opposite of that. So nothing like me. And I'm also like a very type A, kind of ambitious, straight A student type of person, kind of like mine from Ascendance of a Bookworm. So I guess I relate to those two a lot.
Okay. What about anything with Nikaido?
Oh my God. So she is like, I mean, I could never live in the hole. I could never. It is terrifying to me. I am nothing like Nikaido. She like is so comfortable around like horrifying looking people and filth, and it's a tough life, that world. That whole world is a tough life. Although I like gyoza. I support that part. I will happily eat gyoza any day of the week. But other than that, no, we are nothing alike.
Do you think you have a personal preference on working on drama opposed to comedy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that I prefer working on drama because the stories are so rich and the characters are so complex. And when you do a dub, it gives you so much more opportunity to make like your own choices as an actor, as opposed to just replicating what the Japanese actor did. Like, we're always trying to pay homage to the original performance, but I feel like when you're Americanizing a drama, you can come up with the most beautiful, amazing stuff. I mean, I'm thinking even mostly of shows I'm not in, but would want to be in. I mean, when you look at like people's favorite dubs, like lists of people's favorite dubs, almost all of them are dramas, don't you think?
Well, especially like Violet Evergarden.
People love Violet Evergarden. Yeah. Catalea in Violet Evergarden is not like, I mean, sometimes things get heartfelt with her, but for the most part, she's a more detached character in the whole series. You know, she's kind of just there to run the memory dolls, auto memory dolls. But what am I thinking of? Your Name,
right?
Weathering with You, something Pancreas. Like these are the ones that, like, you know, the English dub makes people cry, and that's the good shit.
Well, because with Catalea, at least with a lot of characters you played, you don't really get to be as grounded and nuanced as she is.
Right. No. Which, you know, I love comedy. I think that I have a really good sense of timing and a good comedian. So working on comedy is definitely fun for me. It's definitely a strong suit, but I think I get the most out of the artistic process when I'm working on drama.
So this was pretty early on too, with multiple characters on Yokai Watch.
Yeah, that was, somewhat early on. And I played a lot of characters because Yokai Watch has about 5 billion characters. And we only got to do 1 season of that. So that was kind of an interesting situation. I was new enough to the industry that I didn't realize the show had been on for several seasons with a different cast. And I think what happened, unfortunately, I wasn't aware, is that cast had said, hey, this show's really successful. It's on Disney XD. Kids love it. We would like it to be a union show. And they said, forget it. You're all fired. We'll just get a new non-union cast, which I was a part of. And I would not have agreed to be part of that show had I known that, but I was completely in the dark about that. So for that reason, I'm always a little bummed to talk about Yokai Watch because the characters don't feel like they're mine. I feel like they belong to the actors who played them previously. So that's the tea on that one. It was a really fun show to work on, though. I love the characters are so broad, and you get to play all sorts of creatures. And like, unlike a Pokemon, for instance, where there are tons of creatures, but they don't talk or have personalities, really. They kind of just say one sound over and over again. The creatures in Yokai Watch have so much personality. They're amazing.
Well, I know it's of course not anything like Yokai Watch, but you got to do multiple characters in Hunter x Hunter as well.
Yeah, Hunter x Hunter is really fun. I mean, honestly, that show just went on for so long that after a while it was like, okay, well, I know you played this, but we need you to play something else because we're like on episode 100. So yes, I played Ponzu was like the character with the longest arc. And then, they would throw me in every once in a while, a bus driver in one scene, and then Mosquito in the Chimera arc was also fabulous. I love playing crazy villains like that. I love it.
What do you think is the case where you've had to get the darkest emotional headspace for then so far?
So there's this really random show. What? Sure. Not a lot of people talk about it. It's called Wakfu, and it's a French anime. So it's not an anime, but it's done in the style. And the first couple seasons they dubbed in Canada, and then they moved the dub down to the US. And I don't feel as bad about that one because I think the general consensus was that the dub could be improved. And there's this character I played called Toxine, who had tons of dialogue and was crazy evil. So I got to spend a lot of time in a very similar place to Mosquito, just deeply, insanely evil. I loved playing that character as well. So curious if anybody out there has watched Wakfu. I think it's a little lesser known.
Mm-hmm. What about the case where you've had to alter your voice the most significantly for a character?
Mine from Ascendance of a Bookworm and Len from Gun Gale are both the highest voice I can do. So in terms of hanging out in a altered voice space for a super long time, those stand out. There were times with Len where even though we'd want to work for 4 hours, which is usually like the max amount in a day that you would work, I just couldn't do it because not only is it so high, but she's screaming because they're always fighting. Mm-hmm. So I would poop out. I'm trying to think if there's anything like super low that I've done or super silly.
I think Jill is pretty low in Fire Emblem.
Yeah. Is she? That was a really short session. I mean, that was probably like an hour. So I can't remember. It doesn't stand out because I didn't go home feeling like, ugh. Okay. So many actors, especially males that do more gravelly character voices, I think frequently leave a session like, I can't talk anymore for the rest of the day, but that doesn't happen to me very often. So I'm always like, why are you guys complaining about vocal fatigue? Because I don't have to play this guy. Ugh.
Yeah.
I just get to play girls who talk like this. I love doing silly voices. But big characters, not like little small one-off ones. I think that it's the high voices that stand out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have found talking to voice actresses that also do boy voices that they all have their own like craft on how they do it. Do you have something that you do in particular?
Yeah. My boy voices, I always make them a little bit husky to differentiate them from a girl voice, even though not all boys have a husky voice. And there's a couple things that I go for. So first, I open my throat a lot. I have a really round back of the throat feeling to it. I don't know why, but I guess because it's the opposite of a pinched voice, which I associate with being more female. And then the diction, the enunciation changes when I'm doing a kid boy. And it gets just sloppier, rounder. Hey, this is what I talk like when I do. Yeah, it's kind of like I'm holding a ball in my mouth almost. So those are my like tips and tricks for at least my boy voice. There's a lot of ways to do a boy voice.
Mm-hmm. I know the main name, the male character you do is in Shimajiro.
Yeah, I do. Oh God, I play so many characters in Shimajiro. That's what we say, Shimajiro. There's no right way to pronounce it when you're like Americanizing a show. It's just, do you want to, and that show's Chinese. I play like 4 different little boys in that show. So in order to differentiate between them, and we don't always do an amazing job of that, because it's like, I sometimes will go into a session for Shimajiro and play 8 or 9 different characters. And that gets really tough, especially when they're all in the same scene together, because a lot of the time it's like the preschool classroom and I play like 4 different boys alone in that preschool classroom. So to differentiate them, I will make one more nasal. So I'll put it in my nose a little bit. Hey, yeah, maybe one's like a little higher and one's lower and more aggressive. And you would punch out the words more. But it's hard. I really only got one little boy in me, really.
That's what I was going to ask too. Outside of that, has there been many cases where you've gotten to perform with yourself?
For me, more than most people, I think. I am often cast as 2 best friends. I play twins in this show that only went 1 season called Popples. And on Miraculous Ladybug, I played Rose and Julika, who are best friends. So the trick with those is I always just make one of them a high voice and one of them a low voice, and nobody can tell they're both me. I on TikTok am regularly getting from people, wait, Rose and Julika have the same voice actor? And I'm like, yeah, they always have. When you're talking down here and you're talking up here, and you don't see it coming out of a person, now those sound super different.
It was fun to watch the video of you explaining the rock version of the Kitty song and then the other one.
Yeah, people loved that. I love singing on shows. It's hard on shows that are dubbed, which is a lot of the work I do, because the music's already there. They don't usually have budget or time to totally re-record you. I mean, there's some shows where they do that, where they really care about it, but for shows where the song they don't care about as much, then you're just kind of smashing English words in there and it never sounds right. But for this, when they made that I Love Unicorns track and they were like, okay, we're really going to engineer this. We're going to make you sound good. You're going to sing, you're going to rock out. That was so enjoyable. I'm so glad that exists, that I get to have that little song that's like all me.
Mm-hmm. Outside of that, have you tried singing like rock genre music very much? Or?
God, no. I grew up studying classical music, arias, art songs. And then when I went to college, I majored in music with an emphasis in vocal performance. And my school was, I wouldn't even say conservative. It was just, they only had one way of doing things. And that was that you sang classical music. We only have teachers for classical music. This is what you're going to do. So I was working on classical music and musical theater that entire time, basically just studying being a soprano. And I suck at pop music. I shouldn't rag on myself, but I think I sound silly when I try to sing cool stuff. I'm content with the fact that I just have to stick with what I know.
So on the topic of video games, your first one was Atelier Sophie?
It was, yeah. I had just started working at Bang Zoom, and so those were my first video games where I mean, it was still dubbing. It was just dubbing for a video game rather than an anime. And I mean, I've worked on a lot of JRPGs since, but yes, I certainly preferred the chances I get to record original characters for games, Western games, things like that, because then I mean, I love the storytelling that's been happening in video games lately, because they can make things look so real now. they are bothering to make stories so real and cinematic, and like you're watching like a movie, and in a cutscene, things can get just as dramatic and emotional as they can in a really important scene from the movie. So I think that's all really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So I love working on that stuff, and I'm looking forward to working on more of it.
And also with Pokemon Masters, wasn't Misty was it just given to you?
It was, yeah. I couldn't believe when I walked into that session, they said, "You're playing Misty." And I was like, what? There must be some voice actress who does Misty already. And I think there is.
Yeah.
I don't play Misty in any other Pokemon property, because when I was growing up, she was like the second biggest human character in the show.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's not true anymore. I'm good friends with Sarah Natacheni, who plays Ash currently. So I know she's always working, but I don't know if Misty is still features prominently in the storyline. But I was so honored and amazed. And I think it was just like a regional thing. Like they had been recording Pokemon. This was pre-pandemic, so we weren't doing things remotely as often. They were recording this in LA, but everything else Pokemon, I think, was happening in New York at that time. So that's probably why they got a different cast for the game. So yes, I'm happy to be a part of that world, but also tons of props to whoever plays Misty in all of the other parts of the franchise.
And so with Fire Emblem, is there more of a memory or affinity with the Furina than over Jill? Because Furina was after Jill.
No.
Okay.
I can't tell them apart. I don't remember which is which. It was too long ago and the sessions were too short. Yeah, Fire Emblem is such a huge, wonderful franchise, and they're always making more Fire Emblem everything. So I'm sure this is not the end of my Fire Emblem story, and I will have more stories to tell in the future.
Okay. What about with Scarlet Nexus? That's a much bigger character.
Yes, and I've done the game and the anime, so I have lived in that world a lot. we actually just finished recording the anime like 2 months ago or a month ago. That was it's like 26 episodes for the first season. I mean, it's a really cool game. I loved what a large part of it I got to be. I mean, there's a lot of characters who get to have a really meaty role in that. So yeah, I'm a fan. Hopefully they make more Scarlet Nexus things in that world, because I'd be happy to continue playing there.
Mm-hmm. This is back to anime. A pretty fun one that people don't talk about a whole lot is a High Score Girl. You had a fun role in that.
Yeah, the art style in that is like different, and the tone is kind of original. It's a little, I don't know, like everything's a little more abstract, and you kind of just, everybody's like, well, maybe just my character was like mumbling. Yeah, that was a cool show. It's about I didn't see the whole show because I didn't watch it. I just saw my parts. But they're in an arcade, and they're basically just like trying to be the star of the arcade, and all of the drama, the major drama that comes from people constantly competing with each other over who's going to have the high score on these arcade games, which can be very high drama, mm-hmm. if that's your whole world.
I know, of course, you've been playing Aoi Kanzaki for a little while now, too.
Aoi Kanzaki. Yes, from Demon Slayer. Yeah, I have been. So grateful to be a small part of that amazing show. Aoi is very much me. Okay, that's maybe the character I relate to the most, because this is not something I'm proud of about myself, but I can be a bit of a like, get it done. Why aren't you getting it done? Because I put so much pressure on myself, then I accidentally put that same amount of pressure on other people. And really, I shouldn't be putting that much pressure on anybody, including myself. So I when I saw her like angry little face, like, we're going to get you better. You're going to do these exercises until you're good at them. I was like, I know that girl, because that girl's me. And then I had one episode in the second season where she like gets kind of kidnapped, but then let go, and she gets a nice big ass slap on camera, which was very satisfying. And I read that in the manga, she ends up with the guy with the play that Bryce Papenbrook plays. So maybe I'll get to come back if they ever weave that part of the manga into the anime.
Mm-hmm.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, it's super popular, so I know it'll get fully animated. So then with another interesting case of playing multiple characters in Beastars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the company that dubs Beastars is like the company I work at the most. I love working with them. So they will usually bring me in, even if I'm not playing a major role, to take care of the smaller characters. And that's truly just what I'm doing on Beastars. It's just like filling in the gaps. So I'm not sure that there's any significant character I've played on that show, but tons of times where it's like, there's a giraffe who says a line. Oh, this squirrel has a question. Then they're just tossing me on all of those. And I'm just trying to make them sound different,
mm-hmm.
which is something I do a lot for shows. I do utility player pretty well because I do have a fairly large range.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I'm proud of about myself.
One of my other personal favorites of yours that I guess is kind of more under the radar now is in Brand New Animal.
Yeah. When I announced on TikTok that I played that character, I was surprised how people chimed in and said they'd seen it, because it's a fun show. So many shows came out in the last couple of years where all the characters are animals, but they act like humans.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like a thing people are into just right now, or if I'm just noticing it right now. But a lot of people really like that show, but not in like a loud, overt way. It's like kind of like you said, it's sort of like a cult thing, like under the radar. My character is she's kind of a con artist, but she's also like allied with the main character and usually ends up helping her rather than hurting her. But generally she thinks of herself as somebody who doesn't give a crap about other people's feelings and is just out for herself. But there's a lot of funny jokes in that show, and it would be cool if they made more of it, but it's been a while since it came out. So I've got to assume that's it for BNA.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I called it Brand New Animal and everybody was like, what's that? Nobody realized that that's what BNA stood for.
Yeah. What's been, or what are your thoughts on Record of Ragnarok?
Is that the one where I play the character with boobs that are so big that people have to hold them up for her?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's some top quality entertainment right there. It's not my kind of show. Maybe it's meant for, maybe boys appreciate it more, but a show that's just, we're going to have a big fighting and I've been part of lots of shows like this. The whole conceit of the show is a fighting contest. Who will win the fighting contest? And then it's just person after person doing the fighting to see who wins it. It doesn't really do much for me, but action scenes have never done much for me in movies. I like the story part better. However, working on that show and seeing all the ways that they can animate that character's ridiculous boobs did provide a lot of entertainment during the recording. So I am very grateful for that. We would like get to a new scene and just laugh for 5 minutes before we could even move on.
Yeah.
So thank you, Record of Ragnarok, for that.
I know most recently too, having talked to both Kyle and Caitlin Galda, what was your experience on Tales of Arise?
My experience was like really sequestered. You know, for them, that was like they were the main story, but I got very little sense of the story because my character was basically only in flashbacks or flash forwards. I'm not even sure. It seems to me. I have a zero understanding of how my character fit into that plot line.
Okay.
Unfortunately. But I know that was a really, really exciting game for the two of them. And I love them. So that's awesome.
And one of the most recent animes you worked on, I think, would be the Fate series as a Juan Zhang.
Yeah. They've been making all of these Fate movies, and I've played small parts in all of them, but is Zhuan Zhang the same as Sanzang? Did they?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's like an Americanized version of that name. Okay, so that's the one where they kind of go back to ancient Egypt, and everybody's either a god of some kind or just living in Egypt, and then they have to. Yeah, I mean, it was actually a pretty significant role in that. And then at the end, this was my first introduction to Fate. So I had this huge battle scene with a character played by Erica Lindbeck, who is apparently a really big part of Fate, but I didn't know because I hadn't been in it before. So then at the end of that, I think I die. Spoiler alert, I die. But yeah, so I've been working on those with Tony Oliver. I just finished the last one recently, but Sunzong wasn't in it because she was already dead.
Mm-hmm.
So I just helped out with them some teeny little bit roles as they were filling it in. But yes, I have been doing less anime lately, and that is entirely because I have just been shifting my career to things need to pay a certain amount for me to do them. And so that means that a lot of shows, particularly shows produced by Crunchyroll, I just won't do right now until they raise their rates. If they do, I would do them again. But for now, no. So I mostly can only do an anime if it's on Netflix, because then they will pay me what I need to be paid.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what I've been doing less lately.
Well, this was a live action credit I was going to ask about next. On Night Drive.
I'm barely in it. So it was made by friends. I used to work at a place called M3 Creative that does post-production for mostly they make EPKs. So these are like the behind the scenes footage that you might see on an Avengers DVD, interviews with the cast and things like that. That was a job I had in my mid-20s. And so a lot of the people there I've stayed friends with, and one of them wrote Night Drive, and another one of them said, I want to direct it and film it. And because they knew me already and it was easy, they said, hey, could you come in and just play this guy's wife in a flashback? So there was no dialogue. I think the cast is mostly, I think it's about like an Uber ride kind of gone wrong or something. You would know. So I'm barely in it, but that's amazing that you know it. I'm so excited for my friend that it's like it's spreading around, making its way around the world.
Yeah. Oh, that does make me think to ask, when you were doing hosting and interview work, was there a case where you got really starstruck with who you were meeting? Or
yeah, For me, the most exciting person was Jane Goodall.
Okay.
I was like, I can't believe I'm meeting this woman that I've heard about my entire life. Like when I was a little kid in elementary school, they would say, you know, Jane Goodall is a really important scientist who's, you know, learned so much about chimps. And then she was there in front of me and I was asking her questions. A lot of the time they were, you know, Disney Channel kids. So they weren't crazy famous yet. And now they're more famous. So I used to work with Zendaya when she was a kid. And now she's like the #1 A-list Hollywood star. But that wasn't the case back then. It was kind of cool interviewing the guy who directed Hocus Pocus. I think I was doing an event where they were promoting is it called Disenchanted? No, it's called, it's a Disney Channel movie or series of movies where they're all the kids of the Disney villains. They were musicals and they were really popular. And this guy, Tony Ortega, directed them, and he directed Hocus Pocus, which is like the best Halloween movie of all time. And so interviewing him was kind of cool. But yeah, I think definitely Jane Goodall is #1.
Okay. And this was also on camera. What was your experience on The Rookie?
Amazing. It was a role on just one episode where I got to be the bad guy, but you didn't know it at first. I just seemed like a normal person, but then later on in the episode, I come in and I've got a gun and I get to shoot somebody and say, you can't have her, she's mine, because I'm like jealous that I think somebody's trying to steal the girl that I have a crush on. I had never gotten to fire a gun on set, not a real gun, of course, an airsoft gun, but still, I'd never gotten to be, well, I mean, because I'm like 5'2" and I look 10 years younger than I am. So I never get an opportunity to play like somebody tough. So it was really neat. I loved that experience so much. And then like still to this day, like my family members will be like, I saw you on The Rookie. Even though I do 5 million things like on camera and on TV shows, that's the only thing that was relevant to them.
So you still actively pursue on camera as much as a voiceover?
Not as much. I find it is impossible to give your whole heart to both of those things at the same time. In order to fully pursue voiceover, that needs to be it doesn't need to be your full-time job, but it does need to be your full-time extracurricular activity, at least. If you're, say, working a survival job still that kind of guarantees you'll have your bills paid, all the classes take would be voiceover, any workshops, any mixers you might go to. And you would need to do that same amount of investing your personal time into the community for on camera. And they're two different communities. So I'm taking VO classes and I'm joining VO groups, and I'm not doing the same thing for on camera. If my agent sends me an audition, I do it. And if I book it, that's amazing, but I don't expect it. And I just kind of have it going on the side. And I think that's a good lesson for anybody who is wondering how people get jobs in entertainment. Yes, auditioning is a huge part of the way you get jobs. And part of it is being a part of this community. And it doesn't mean you can force people to give you opportunities, but if you are just around and have your whole heart in it and a good person and are doing the work, you never know when people will just call you up and say, hey, I would love for you to be in this, because auditioning is hard. It's a big pain in the butt to send out auditions. Then you have to listen to all of them and then make a decision. And you might not know the person. You might not trust that on the day they'll be professional or, are capable of everything you need them to be capable of. So people really like to be able to cast somebody that they already know and like and trust when they can.
Mm-hmm. This is probably obvious to ask too, but since you've been doing voiceover, has your experience in the community in general been like mostly positive?
Yeah. Here's what I think. I think that voice actors are generally kind to each other, but we also lack a lot of the connection that, say, I had when I was in the theater community.
Mm.
And the on-camera community, everybody's kind as well, but it can be a little more petty because it is so much more image-based. I mean, and not just looking pretty or not pretty or handsome or not handsome, but, types. Are you the right type for these parts? And people can feel less than because they look at somebody and say, oh, they really read that kind of person. And I feel, and then those bad feelings can keep nice connections from happening. But for VO, the problem is we don't see each other very much. Mm-hmm. Because we rarely work together. Even though we're on the same project, we record separately. So I like being part of the VO community, and I've done everything I can in terms of, joining as many clubs and organizations and going to as many parties, and anything I can do to connect with people is great, but it is still a teeny tiny fraction of the level of connection I felt in theater, where when you do a show, you hang out with those people for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, every day for several weeks. And then you see them at these big open auditions where everybody shows up and is waiting for hours for their turn to audition. So you got to spend a lot of time hanging out. So yeah, VO community is cool and nice, but I would love more.
Mm-hmm. So is there anything else that's upcoming that you're part of that you can safely talk about?
No. Yeah, usually if it's not out yet, then I can't. Just have to wait and see.
Okay. Well, the most recent credit was Horizon Forbidden West.
Mm-hmm. Which I recorded ages ago, like years ago. But that game took a while to make because it's an amazing game. So maybe like 2019, I did my session for that, and it just came out a month ago. So yeah, recent, but also not that recent.
Well, my final question is always asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy. Oh, another part of my life is my mental health advocacy. I have an Instagram page called Get Thee to a Therapist, and I've written a book by the same name that will be coming out in the fall to help people who, like me, have struggled with panic attacks and anxiety. And I feel like that, in a lot of ways, is my purpose in life, is to pass on the lessons I've learned through the pain that I've experienced with that trial that I've faced. So I would love to be thought of as somebody who is intelligent, a leader, and has helped people survive and thrive through dealing with mental health challenges. That's really, lately, that's what I've felt is my purpose.
Okay. And in terms of your performances so far, is there anything that you want people to take away from?
I mean, if I'm being honest, I perform because I love it, because it fills me up and allows me to play. Maybe I'm getting a little in the weeds on this. I think I'm lost. But yes, I mean, I would love for people to say that Reba has always been a great performer who's really entertained me.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm glad that we got to do this.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for asking me. And yeah, it was an absolute pleasure.
Have a good rest of your day.
I will. Okay, thanks. Bye, Chris.